The Ice Age has been sleeping for tens of thousands of years under layers of ice and frozen soil. It is slowly waking up, but not with screaming mammoths or stalking cave lions. Instead, real bodies frozen in time are slowly melting through the permafrost. These aren't fossils, they're time travelers. There are perfectly preserved mammoth calves with milk still in their stomachs, giant elk with antlers bigger than a car, and even worms from 46,000 years ago that woke up. Each thawed body is a message from a world that no longer exists. They tell us not only how these animals lived, but also why they died out, and maybe, just maybe, how some of them could walk the earth again. The baby mammoth mummies of Siberia. A doorway into a world that disappeared thousands of years ago has been opened by the discovery of infant mammoth mummies in Siberia's frigid regions. One name sticks out among these frozen giants, in miniature: Lyuba, a baby mammoth discovered in 2007 by a reindeer herder on the Yamal Peninsula. The best preserved mammoth yet discovered, she was only a month old when she passed away. After being imprisoned in permafrost for almost 40,000 years, her skin, fur, tiny tail hairs, and even her fragile eyelashes all stayed completely intact. Her stomach was discovered to be full of her mother's milk, shocking scientists and providing a hitherto unheard-of glimpse into the diet of juvenile mammoths. She probably suffocated in mud after falling into a riverbank, her airways blocked with sediment, which ironically helped seal her body from degradation before the ice killed her. Her death, as shown by CT scans, was swift and terrible. But Lyuba is not the only one. Yucca, another famous mammoth mummy discovered in 2010, provided a different kind of mystery. Unlike Lyuba, Yucca showed strange injuries, cuts that some scientists believe may have been caused by humans. Her tusks had unusual wear marks, and her leg bones showed patterns that could only be made by stone tools or even early human spears. If true, this would mean mammoths and humans interacted far more frequently than we thought in that region, 39,000 years ago. But Yucca also gave scientists something else: preserved red hair and an intact tail tuft, both of which helped researchers understand how mammoth fur adapted for extreme cold. The woolly undercoat was denser than previously thought, with microscopic hollow hairs trapping heat much like a polar bear's fur. Recent research between 2023 and 2025 has pushed the science of mammoth mummies even further. Teams from the Northeastern Federal University in Yakutsk used micro-CT scanning to look at Lyuba's internal organs without cutting her open. They found partially digested plants in her intestines, tiny fragments of grass and flowering tundra plants, suggesting that even young mammoths nibbled on solid food earlier than previously assumed. A study of her tooth enamel revealed stress growth lines, meaning baby mammoths went through seasonal hardships like drought or nutritional stress, just like modern elephants do. Her intestinal microorganisms, however, produced the most unexpected result. Scientists recovered ancient microbiomes from Lyuba's intestines that had been preserved in her stomach's frozen slurry. They discovered special bacterial strains that are no longer present in any contemporary elephant species and are specialized to ferment hardy Ice Age vegetation. This finding could be very important for de-extinction efforts, since it implies that mammoths had special gut microorganisms that allowed them to live on low-nutrient tundra vegetation. It might be necessary to replicate the mammoth's gut flora in order to maintain its health if scientists ever manage to clone one. A 2024 DNA sequencing project led by the Mammoth Revival Initiative also extracted high-quality DNA from Lyuba's bone marrow. Unlike earlier degraded samples, this new sequencing effort has mapped over 90% of the mammoth genome, filling in gaps left by previous studies. What shocked geneticists was how many mammoth genes are linked to fat metabolism, hair growth, and oxygen efficiency, traits crucial for surviving extreme cold. Several of these genes are now being spliced into elephant cell lines in experimental labs in South Korea and the US, with the aim of creating mammoth-elephant hybrids. These baby mammoths are also teaching us about their family lives. Lyuba's body proportions show she grew faster than modern elephants, meaning mammoth mothers may have produced richer milk to help calves survive the brutal winters. CT scans of her ears and inner skull even revealed well-developed auditory canals, meaning baby mammoths may have relied heavily on vocal communication, just like elephant calves do today. The small details, like the undamaged eyelashes and the milk residue that has formed on her trunk hairs, are possibly the most heartwarming of all. These details, a frozen time capsule of an Ice Age planet, give her the impression that she passed away just yesterday. Scientists observed that her skin was still supple, almost like leather, and that her small tail hairs waved slightly as she was moved, as though life had just left her body after lifting her out of the cold dirt. More mummies continue to appear as Siberian permafrost melts at record rates. In 2023, another young mammoth, nicknamed Koko, was uncovered near Lake Pechenalavato. Unlike Liuba, Koko's body showed signs of malnutrition, with thinner fat layers and worn teeth, giving clues to harsh Ice Age famines. Such finds are becoming more common as the ground thaws, making the next decade crucial for collecting these remains before they decay in open air. Steppe bison with last meals still inside. Some of the most amazing Ice Age time capsules have been discovered in Siberia's frozen steppes. Whole steppe bison carcasses have been preserved so beautifully that scientists can still see what the animals consumed in their last moments. These enormous, thick-furred grazers dominated Ice Age grasslands from Europe to Alaska and are near cousins of modern American bison. Their frozen remains reveal tales of entire ecosystems caught in unexpected climate disasters, not just of individual deaths. The 2011 discovery of a steppe bison known as Blue Babe from Alaskan permafrost was one of the most well-known. Even though it was found decades ago, additional examinations conducted in 2022 and 2024 uncovered previously undiscovered features. Modern studies concentrated on Blue Babe's stomach and hair, but his muscles were so well preserved that in the 1980s, scientists famously prepared and sampled a stew made from a sample described as tough and gamey. Researchers discovered pieces of wild grasses, sedges, and even flowering plants within, all perfectly frozen, as though they had been put in a freezer just minutes after he passed away. This exceptional preservation verified that he was grazing just before he passed away, most likely from a severe cold snap, or perhaps from injuries sustained by Ice Age predators like scimitar-toothed cats or cave lions. The predator argument is supported by scratches and punctures on his hide, but what's most significant is that his death was nearly instantaneous because his stomach still contained half-eaten plants. In recent years, Siberian finds have surpassed Blue Babe's level of preservation. In 2023, scientists recovered a young steppe bison from the Kolyma River region in Russia, preserved with its tongue, fur, and even the pollen trapped in its nostrils. This pollen provided a snapshot of the exact plants growing in that region 44,000 years ago. Sedge-rich meadows dotted with flowering forbs. More surprisingly, researchers found tiny grains of dirt in its lungs, hinting that a sudden dust storm or collapsing soil may have suffocated it. The combination of seasonal pollen and dusty lungs suggests that bison deaths were sometimes triggered by environmental disasters, not just predators. Another bison carcass found in Yakutia in 2024 revealed something even stranger. Its last meal contained grass seeds that had started to sprout inside its stomach. Scientists believe this happened because the bison died just after eating fresh spring growth, and the warmth of its body allowed the seeds to germinate before it froze. This bizarre detail is a unique glimpse into seasonal feeding patterns and how tightly these animals' lives were connected to short growing seasons. Our understanding of Ice Age grasslands, or the Mammoth steppe, is changing as a result of research into these frozen stomach contents. For many years, scientists thought that hardy, low-nutrient grasses dominated the steppe. However, a far richer environment is being revealed by these bison stomachs. Nutrient-rich herbs, mosses, and flowering plants were more prevalent than previously believed. This could help to explain why such large herbivores survived the Ice Age. They were consuming a range of plants high in protein rather than just tough grass. Hair and fat analysis has also provided new insights. Steppe bison had dense winter coats with 2 layers of fur, similar to modern musk oxen. Hair growth rings, much like tree rings, have been studied under microscopes to understand seasonal stress. A 2024 paper showed that bison experienced distinct winter famine periods every year, with hair rings showing slowed growth during harsh, cold months. This stress pattern matched the seasonal plant remains in their stomachs, proving that bison had to endure long periods of low food availability before the short summer bursts of rich vegetation. These frozen bodies also provide indications of sickness and mass mortality. Certain steppe bison carcasses exhibit symptoms of infectious disease, particularly those that are grouped in low-lying locations. Researchers have found remnants of ancient bacteria that have been kept in ice for tens of thousands of years in their lymph nodes and bones. According to the genetic sequencing of these bacteria, steppe bison were periodically subjected to unexpected outbreaks that may have been caused by diseases similar to anthrax and might have destroyed entire herds. Their extinction may have been caused more by these diseases and climate change than by human hunting alone. They have also drawn attention to the color of their fat. When thawed, the muscle and fat tissue of certain bison, notably blue babe, displayed an odd bluish color. In addition to suggesting extraordinary cold adaptations, this is the result of iron reacting with minerals found in permafrost. These creatures carried extensive layers of omega-rich fat, which, when frozen, took on strange colors. Even during harsh winters, this fat served as biological insulation, keeping their organs warm. Woolly rhino carcasses with skin and hair intact. The woolly rhinoceros is one of the most scary-looking animals from the Ice Age. It also looks very creepy when it's dead. These huge two-horned animals used to live in the cold tundra and steppes of Eurasia. They are closely related to modern Sumatran and Indian rhinos. They were built for cold weather, unlike their modern cousins, with thick fur, lots of fat and wide horns that could push through snow. For many years, scientists could only guess what they looked like based on a few bones and cave drawings. All of that changed when perfectly preserved woolly rhino bodies with skin, hair, and even soft tissue started to come out of the melting Siberian permafrost. In 2020, reindeer hunters in Yakutia made one of the most amazing discoveries. A young woolly rhino, later called Sasha, that had been frozen in the ice for more than 34,000 years. The blonde-brown fur on Sasha's body was still matted, and her ears, nose, and lips were still whole. This was the first close-up view of how this animal had adapted to living in cold places. In cave art, rhino horns are often blown out of proportion, but Sasha's horns were surprisingly short for her age. This proves that young rhinos gradually grew their famously long, sweeping horns. But in 2021, an even more amazing animal was found near the Terektiak River in Yakutia. Another woolly rhino that had been kept almost completely whole. This adult animal's thick reddish-brown fur was still stuck to its sides, and the front horn was so well preserved that experts were able to take keratin samples to study in more detail. Keratin growth rings, which look a lot like tree rings, showed the rhino's life story, including how it dealt with seasonal stress, changed its food, and even went through its reproductive cycles. Researchers found that these animals went hungry every year during harsh winters, depending on stored fat and scraping snow with their horns to get to plants that were buried. What was in the rhino's stomach was just as telling. Scientists found pieces of sedges, grasses, and even moss in its stomach, proving that these rhinos did not only eat grass, as was once thought. Instead, they were adaptable grazers who changed what they ate with the seasons. A microscopic look at plant silica in the stomach also showed that they probably grazed in fields without trees instead of brushy areas. The preserved horns themselves have been a goldmine for paleogenetics. Keratin from these frozen specimens was used in a 2024 genetic sequencing project, allowing researchers to identify genes responsible for fur density and fat storage. These findings confirmed that woolly rhinos evolved similar cold-adapted traits as mammoths, a classic example of convergent evolution, where unrelated animals develop similar survival strategies in the same environment. The condition of the rhino's blood arteries and soft tissue may have been the most shocking thing that was found in their bodies. A study done in 2023 discovered that some muscle tissue still had proteins and collagen strands that had not been broken down. This means that old DNA could be extracted from muscle tissue with less contamination than from bones alone. In fact, experts have sequenced almost the whole genome of the woolly rhino, making it, along with mammoths, one of the best mapped Ice Age species. De-extinction activists are now seriously talking about trying to bring these rhinos back to life using the Sumatran rhino, which is the closest living relative, as a stand-in. However, there are still a lot of ethical issues. Another mystery concerns the cause of their extinction. For decades, researchers believed humans hunted woolly rhinos to extinction, but the latest frozen finds suggest a different story. Many of these carcasses show no signs of butchering, but some have unusual stress fractures and cracked horns, consistent with ice storms and sudden climate shifts rather than hunting. Isotope studies of their bones revealed that in the final centuries before extinction, these rhinos faced repeated warm-cold fluctuations, which disrupted the growth of the grasses they depended on. One frozen adult even showed signs of lung damage caused by inhaling dust, implying that the changing Ice Age climate, turning steppes into dusty, arid grasslands, may have been more deadly than human hunters. The frozen cave lions of the Kolyma River. The frozen cave lion cubs found in Siberian permafrost are one of the most haunting Ice Age finds. They are so well kept that they look like they are just sleeping, because they were buried under ice for tens of thousands of years. These cubs have helped us learn a lot about this now extinct predator, as well as Ice Age environments, and how predators and prey interact. The most famous of these cubs are Boris and Sparta, two lion siblings found along the Semyelyak and Kolyma rivers in Yakutia, Siberia. Sparta, discovered in 2018, is widely regarded as the best preserved Ice Age mammal ever found. Her fur, a golden beige coat with faint spots, still clings to her body, and even her whiskers and paw pads are intact. Her claws remain sharp, her teeth are fully formed, and her ears are folded just as they would have been in life. Radiocarbon dating placed her at 28,000 years old, while Boris, found nearby a year earlier, is slightly older at about 43,000 years. What stunned scientists was how little damage their bodies had. Unlike many frozen animals that show signs of scavenging or freezing while decomposed, these cubs were flash frozen shortly after death. CT scans and tissue studies suggest that their den may have collapsed, trapping them under permafrost almost instantly. The sudden burial in frozen soil created a natural freezer, preserving even delicate tissues like brain matter, lung tissue, and intestinal lining. Amazingly, these cubs showed us how closely cave lions were connected to modern lions. In 2021 and 2024, DNA sequencing showed that cave lions, Panthera spelaea, were a different species, but they were closely related to modern lions, Panthera leo. Their ancestors split off from them about 1.9 million years ago, making them a separate species. But they had special traits that made them different. They had thicker fur, smaller ears to keep warm, and a slightly stronger build to help them hunt bison, reindeer, and young mammoths during the Ice Age. Sparta's stomach contents provided additional clues about her diet, or rather, what she might have been eating before she died. Scientists found trace amounts of mother's milk protein in her digestive system, confirming she was still nursing when she died. They also detected faint residues of animal tissue, suggesting she may have been licking meat provided by her mother, much like modern lion cubs transition to solid food. The fur and whiskers of these cubs have been particularly valuable for climate reconstruction. A 2023 isotopic analysis of Sparta's fur revealed seasonal changes in nitrogen and carbon levels, indicating that her mother's diet shifted between high-protein prey, like young reindeer, in summer, and more scavenged or lean meat in harsh winters. This supports the idea that cave lions followed migrating herds, moving with the seasons much like modern predators in the Arctic do. Their brains may have been where the creepiest and most surprising finding was made. The micro-CT tests that were done on Sparta's head showed that some of her brain tissue was still there. This is very uncommon in Ice Age finds, and it could help scientists learn more about how the brains of big cats have changed over time. For example, it might show how current lions process sensory information or hunt differently. Another frozen lion cub, nicknamed Uyan, was discovered in 2022, also near the Kolyma River region. Uyan was slightly older, estimated at 6 to 8 weeks old at the time of death, and showed different fur patterns, suggesting cave lions may have had spotted coats as juveniles for camouflage, much like modern lion cubs. His teeth displayed stress growth lines, hinting at possible seasonal hardships or a harsh winter before his death. These lion mummies are also helping scientists understand predator-prey relationships in the Pleistocene. The cub's teeth and claw development indicate they began using their claws earlier than modern lions, possibly because prey like reindeer and muskoxen required cubs to practice hunting techniques early in life. Some researchers believe cave lions lived in slightly smaller prides than modern African lions, due to the vast open tundra steppe, relying more on ambush than cooperative hunts. Additionally, these discoveries have a forensic angle. Some experts have seen small injuries on the cubs, like Boris's ribs being slightly broken. Even though there is no proof of human contact, these injuries could have been caused by falling trees, fights between brothers, or even people looking for bodies after they have died. The site soil study shows that the cub's den was in an area with a lot of loess that is prone to sudden landslides. This supports the idea that they died when their shelter collapsed. Puppies from the Pleistocene, wolves or dogs? The frozen Pleistocene puppies are one of the most interesting things that scientists have found from the Ice Age. They are tiny predators that have been frozen in time and are so well preserved that their fur still shines, and their teeth are sharp enough to shine under lab lights. But what's really interesting about these frozen pups isn't how well they're preserved. It's the question they raise. Were they wild wolves, or were they early dogs that lived with people thousands of years before we thought? The most famous of these pups, nicknamed Dogor, Yakutian for friend, was discovered in 2018 in Siberia's Indigirka River region. Radiocarbon dating revealed that Dogor lived around 18,000 years ago, a crucial period when wolves were beginning to diverge into wild and domesticated lineages. What shocked scientists was his incredible preservation. His fur was still soft and golden brown, his eyelashes intact, and even his tiny nose pad remained leathery. When researchers examined his mouth, they found fully erupted puppy teeth, suggesting he died at only 2 months old. Geneticists started arguing about Dogor right away. At first, DNA tests couldn't tell if he was clearly a wolf or a dog. Instead, his genome seemed to be from an early branch that split before wolves and dogs totally split off from each other. This opened up the exciting chance that Dogor was home to a group of early dogs, animals that humans may have partially tamed during the Ice Age, but were not yet fully dog-like. In 2023, new genetic analyses using improved sequencing technology added more depth to this mystery. Researchers found that Dogor carried genetic markers associated with tolerance to human proximity, similar to modern dogs, yet his fur density and muscle genes were closer to wild wolves. This suggests that early humans may have been selectively feeding or interacting with these animals, creating a middle stage in domestication. But Dogor isn't the only Pleistocene puppy changing what we know about human-animal relationships. In 2021, scientists unearthed 2 more pups, Dina and Boris, both around 14,000 years old, from the Kolyma River region. Unlike Dogor, whose stomach was empty, these 2 still had preserved stomach contents. To everyone's surprise, their stomachs contained traces of animal fat and what appeared to be scraps of cooked meat. While this could have been scavenged from other animals, some scientists suggest it may be indirect evidence that these pups were being fed by humans, strengthening the idea that Ice Age people may have been raising and partially domesticating them. The fur and skin preservation on these pups has also revealed new information about Ice Age canines. Microscopic studies showed that they had two fur layers, a dense woolly undercoat and a water-resistant outer coat, perfect for surviving Siberia's extreme cold. This double coat is similar to modern sled dogs, such as Siberian huskies, suggesting that even these ancient canines had already adapted to frigid climates, possibly by following human hunting groups in the Arctic tundra. The pup's brains showed one of the most surprising things. Scientists found that some of Dogor's brain tissue was still there when they scanned him, with high-resolution micro-CT imaging in 2024. This is a rare event in Ice Age mummies. This gave researchers a unique chance to look at how the brains of ancient dogs and wolves are similar to those of current dogs and wolves. Early research shows that Dogor's olfactory bulb was a little smaller than a modern wolf's. This may have meant that proto-dogs changed how they behaved as they became less able to hunt for food on their own and more dependent on people. The frozen puppies can also tell you about their social lives. The way their teeth are worn down shows that they were raised a little younger than wild wolves, which fits with the idea that people may have had a hand in raising them. Wolves today nurse their pups for up to 2 months before giving them solid food. However, early proto-dogs could have been weaned sooner if people fed them meat scraps. But these results bring up a bigger question. Why were these early dogs important to people? A lot of scientists think they were used as hunting partners, scavengers, or even as early warning systems against dangerous animals. During the Ice Age, people probably had better senses, which helped them, and animals got safe places to live and food to eat in return. The extinct horse that looks alive. Of all the things that have been found frozen from the Ice Age, the leaner horse foals that were found in Siberian permafrost are the most real. The soft fur, whiskers, and even liquid blood of these extinct foals have been preserved so well that they are some of the best examples for study into bringing extinct species back to life. It was like stepping into a time machine when experts first found these tiny horses. The foals looked like they could stand up and walk away at any moment. The first major find came in 2018, when a foal estimated to be just a few weeks old at the time of death was discovered in the Batagayka crater, a massive permafrost depression in the Yakutia region of Siberia. Nicknamed the Lena foal after the nearby Lena River, this baby horse lived around 42,000 years ago. Its chestnut-colored coat was perfectly preserved, its mane still neatly lying across its neck, and even its small eyelashes remained visible. What truly shocked scientists was the discovery of liquid blood still inside its veins and heart, a phenomenon almost unheard of in Ice Age mummies. The extreme cold had acted as a natural cryogenic freezer, keeping the blood from clotting or drying out over tens of thousands of years. A second foal, discovered in 2021 in the same region, was in even better condition. This one not only had intact skin and fur, but also had soft internal organs that still retained their natural texture. Researchers found partially digested milk proteins in its stomach, proving that the foal had been nursing right before its sudden death. Like many other frozen animals of the period, it likely drowned or was trapped in mud, then rapidly frozen, preventing decay. The Lena foals belong to an extinct species known as Equus lanensis, or Lena horses. These were small, sturdy horses adapted to the harsh, cold grasslands of the Pleistocene. They were covered in thick fur, with stockier builds than modern wild horses, and had shorter, muscular legs, traits suited for moving through snow and frozen terrain. Their teeth and preserved gut contents reveal they grazed on tough steppe grasses, sedges and shrubs, similar to the diets of Ice Age bison and mammoths. What really amazes me about these foals is how much science information they have given us in just a few years. In 2022 and 2024, DNA sequencing groups were able to get high-quality genetic material from their bone marrow and blood, which isn't usually possible with mammals from the Ice Age. Scientists can now map out almost the whole genome of Equus linensis and compare it to current horse breeds. Early research shows that leaner horses were genetically more like Przewalski's horses, which are the last truly wild horse species left in the world, than like farmed horses. But they also had special genes that helped them deal with cold, like genes that made their hair grow thicker and slowed their metabolism down in the winter. These aren't traits that current horses have. The gut microbiome of these foals has also yielded surprising findings. Scientists managed to revive ancient bacteria from their intestines, which were adapted to digest fibrous, frozen season plants. Such bacteria no longer exist in modern horses, raising the question of whether any future de-extinct leaner horses would need to be reintroduced to these ancient microbes to survive properly in cold environments. There are also clues about climate and extinction events hidden in these foals. Isotopic analysis of their teeth revealed that they were born in late spring or early summer, which matches seasonal breeding patterns seen in modern horses. However, their growth lines showed stress just weeks before their deaths, hinting at a sudden environmental change, possibly an early snowfall or flash freeze event. This suggests that abrupt climate shifts, rather than gradual warming, may have caused frequent die-offs in Ice Age horse populations. Their hair color is one of the more interesting things about the leaner foals. Most wild horses today have muted brown or grey coats to help them blend in with their surroundings. These babies, on the other hand, had reddish-brown fur with thin stripes going down their legs. Genetic testing showed that striping genes were still active. This means that leaner horses may have kept their primitive hair patterns, like zebras, possibly to protect themselves from cave lions or wolves. Handling these foals has been an emotional experience for scientists. When researchers first removed the 2018 foal from the permafrost, they noted how soft its fur felt, as if it had only just died. The liquid blood, still dark red, looked fresh when thawed, shocking the team into silence. One researcher described it as a living ghost from another world. Even the foal's mane appeared to have been flattened naturally, as it lay frozen in place. Its body curled gently, as though it had fallen asleep. The foals have also provided insight into Ice Age herd behavior. Wear patterns on their tiny hooves suggest that even at a young age, leaner horse foals walked long distances with their mothers, likely migrating seasonally in search of grazing grounds. This behavior mirrors modern wild horse herds, but may have been more extreme, as Ice Age grasslands could stretch across hundreds of miles. Giant cave bears preserved with nose and claws. Giant cave bears found frozen in Siberian permafrost are one of the most amazing Ice Age discoveries in the past few years. These huge carnivores, or more correctly omnivores, were once some of the most dangerous animals in Eurasia. Before going extinct about 15,000 years ago, cave bears ruled the woods and grasslands during the Ice Age. They were over 11 feet tall on their hind legs and weighed up to 1,500 pounds. But until recently, bones and rock fossils were the main way we knew what they were like. In 2020, experts found the first cave bear body that had been fully preserved. It had fur, skin, soft tissue, a nose, and even claws. This discovery, made by reindeer herders on Bolshoi-Lyakovsky Island in the Siberian Arctic, stunned paleontologists worldwide. The bear, estimated to be 22,000 to 39,000 years old, was so intact that its nose cartilage and lips remained perfectly shaped, a feature rarely preserved in Ice Age mammals. Even its massive claws, still sheathed in keratin, curved as if the bear were ready to swipe at prey. Its fur, a thick reddish-brown coat, clung to its body, giving a vivid idea of how these animals once looked in life. CT scans and internal tissue examinations revealed astonishing details. The bear's internal organs, including its stomach and liver, were partially preserved, allowing scientists to analyze its last meals. Inside its stomach, they found fragments of grass, berries, and sedges, confirming that cave bears were not pure carnivores as once believed. This supports growing evidence that they were primarily herbivorous or omnivorous, depending heavily on vegetation during warmer months and possibly scavenging only when plant food was scarce. The preservation of the bear's nose and sinuses also opened new research avenues. Micro-CT imaging revealed that cave bears had highly developed nasal passages lined with dense blood vessels, suggesting they were well adapted to detecting scents under snow, an important trait for finding buried plants or carcasses in winter. The long nasal cavity also hints that they might have been capable of detecting seasonal plant growth from great distances, much like modern grizzly bears can smell berries from miles away. The 2020 find wasn't the only one. In 2021 and 2023, additional cave bear remains surfaced from permafrost regions in Yakutia and Chukotka. One of these, a cub estimated to be only a few months old at death, was almost perfectly preserved, with tiny whiskers and soft fur still intact. Its stomach contained traces of its mother's milk, confirming that cave bears nursed their young for extended periods, much like modern bears do. The adult bear's muscle tissue was another treasure for scientists. Protein analysis showed well-preserved collagen fibers, enabling researchers to study the animal's physical strength and metabolism. Cave bears had dense, slow-twitch muscle fibers similar to modern hibernating bears, indicating they were built for endurance rather than explosive speed. This fits with their likely lifestyle, slow-moving grazers that relied on fat storage and hibernation rather than active year-round hunting. Perhaps the most dramatic revelation from these carcasses relates to hibernation habits. Bone and tissue samples showed cyclical growth lines, confirming seasonal hibernation patterns. Chemical isotopes in the bear's bones revealed that it built massive fat reserves in late summer, then lived off those reserves for up to 6 months during deep winter hibernation. Some scientists even speculate that these bears hibernated in dens near coastal areas, occasionally scavenging frozen fish or marine carcasses, though direct evidence is still scarce. The discovery also led to talks on what caused them to go extinct. People were blamed for hunting cave bears to extinction for a long time, but new information from these frozen bodies shows climate change was a bigger cause. Isotope studies of the fossilized bones and teeth show that plant diversity dropped sharply near the end of the Ice Age. This meant that these mostly herbivorous animals didn't have as many plants to eat. Their need for caves to hibernate may have made them more competitive with people who started using the same dwellings. The adult bear's frozen claws and paw pads gave a very real look at how strong it was. Each hand was still covered in keratin and had a sharp curve that made it possible to tear through frozen ground or thick plants. The thick calluses on the paw pads, which were twisted but still whole, showed that these animals had been roaming for a long time over rough terrain. Frozen giant elk with antlers still attached. The giant elk, also called Megaloceros giganteus, is one of the most beautiful animals from the Ice Age. During the Pleistocene, these huge herbivores were some of the most famous animals. Their horns could be up to 12 feet wide. They were only known for hundreds of years from bones and antler pieces found in bogs all over Europe. But new discoveries of permafrost in Siberia have changed everything. They have revealed frozen giant elk bodies with their huge antlers still connected, letting us see these Ice Age giants in all their glory. In 2021, hunters in Yakutia found one of the most amazing things: a partly exposed body sticking out of the melting permafrost near the Indigirka River. During excavations, a nearly whole giant elk bull was found lying on its side with its huge antlers still attached to its head. Paleontologists were shocked when they saw the antlers. They were still attached to the bone by pieces of velvet-like skin and measured over 10 feet from tip to tip, making it the biggest set of intact antlers ever found. Even more amazing, the animal's head still had soft fur patches around its muzzle, and some of its nostrils and lips were still there, which helped scientists accurately rebuild its face. A second discovery in 2023 revealed a younger female, which lacked the massive antlers of the males but was almost fully preserved, with its thick reddish-brown winter coat still clinging to its body. Her preserved hoof pads showed she had been walking across soft, muddy terrain before she died, likely trapped in melting permafrost or a collapsing riverbank. These frozen remains have shed new light on how these animals lived and why they evolved such massive antlers. CT scans of the male's antlers revealed dense vascular channels, confirming that the antlers grew incredibly fast during the short summer months, similar to modern deer, but on a much grander scale. Growth rates were estimated at 2 centimeters per day, requiring a massive amount of nutrients. Isotope analysis of the elk's bones showed that males likely gorged themselves on nutrient-rich plants in the spring and summer to fuel this rapid growth, then lost significant weight during the winter mating season when food became scarce. The preserved stomach contents of the 2021 bull provided even more insight. Inside were remnants of sedges, willow leaves, and flowering tundra plants, proving that these elk were opportunistic feeders, grazing in open grasslands during summer and browsing shrubs during colder months. Pollen grains trapped in its nostrils suggested it died in late summer or early autumn, likely after the rutting season, which may explain its thin, fat layers. The timing of its death is important because many researchers believe rutting stress, combined with harsh winters, was a major factor in their high mortality rates. The big elk that was frozen also gave us important information about how muscles and fur have changed over time. Tissue samples from the female's body showed that, like modern caribou, these elk had a thick layer under their longer guard hairs that helped them survive the cold. But their big, thin legs, which can be seen in the preserved female, show that they were made for speed on the open plains, not for stomping through deep snow like moose. This might have made it harder for them to stay alive as the woods grew bigger after the last glacial maximum. Perhaps the most unusual and interesting feature was the antler velvet that had been kept. Microscopically, it showed that it had a lot of special blood vessels and growth hormones, like current deer, but in much higher proportions. This has led to new arguments about whether the giant elk's big antlers were just for show or served other thermoregulatory purposes, like helping males get rid of extra body heat during the hot summer growth season. These frozen finds have also brought up the question of extinction again. People were thought to have killed off all the big elk for many years, but the new remains show a more complicated story. Isotopic stress markers found in the bones of the 2021 bull showed that it had been malnourished several times. This suggests that changing plant life patterns, not too much killing, were the main cause of its decline. During the Ice Age, grasslands gave way to denser forests. It's possible that these huge grazers had a hard time finding enough open land to hunt, and their huge antlers would have made it harder for them to move through the dense forests. Lemmings, voles, and the forgotten small mammals. When we think of Ice Age creatures, we picture mammoths, giant rhinos, or saber-toothed cats. But the real survivors, and in many ways the best climate detectives, are the small mammals. Elephants, rhinoceroses, and saber-toothed cats are some of the animals that come to mind when we think of the Ice Age. They are, however, the real survivors, and in many ways, the best climate detectives. They are the small animals that did well under those giants. When compared to mammoths, lemmings, voles, and other small rodents may not seem important, but their frozen bodies, which have been kept perfectly in Siberian permafrost, are changing what we know about ecosystems during the Ice Age. Owls, foxes, wolves, and even early humans ate these tiny animals, which were the base of the food chain. Now, tens of thousands of years later, they are giving scientists information about climate change, trends of extinction, and ways to stay alive. Did very well under those huge feet. When compared to mammoths, lemmings, voles, and other small rodents may not seem important, but their frozen bodies, which have been kept perfectly in Siberian permafrost, are changing what we know about ecosystems during the Ice Age. Owls, foxes, wolves, and even early humans ate these tiny animals, which were the base of the food chain. Now, tens of thousands of years later, they are giving scientists information about climate change, trends of extinction, and ways to stay alive. One of the best preserved finds came in 2022 when a frozen collared lemming was uncovered near the Yana River in Siberia. Unlike bones or partial fur clumps, this lemming was whole, complete with tiny ears, whiskers, and soft grey fur. Even its delicate claws were intact, curled as if gripping frozen soil. Microscopic analysis of its fur revealed seasonal molting patterns, proving that these lemmings changed coat colours, from brownish grey in summer to pure white in winter, much like their modern Arctic relatives. But the real treasure was hidden in its stomach contents. Inside, researchers found partially digested seeds and grass blades, giving them a snapshot of the vegetation growing in that area at the exact moment the lemming died. This tiny meal contained not only grass seeds, but also fragments of flowering tundra plants, suggesting that Ice Age Siberia was far richer in plant diversity than previously believed. Such findings are crucial because they show that even during the harshest glacial periods, microhabitats with lush vegetation existed, supporting a wide range of animals. Voles, small, mouse-like rodents, have been equally valuable. Frozen voles recovered in 2023 from the Kolyma River region were so well preserved that researchers could study their teeth under microscopes. Vole teeth grow continuously, and the patterns of wear and growth rings act like climate diaries. Analysis revealed seasonal fluctuations in their diets, switching from grass-heavy feeding in summer to bark and roots in winter, which mirrors how Ice Age herbivores adapted to changing seasons. Interestingly, vole population density seems to have exploded during certain Ice Age periods. Layers of frozen vole burrows discovered in permafrost soil show evidence of mass die-offs, followed by rapid population booms, a phenomenon similar to modern Arctic vole and lemming cycles. These boom and bust cycles likely shape the behavior of predators such as Arctic foxes and snowy owls, which depended on rodent surges for survival. It was the old vole and lemming burrows that were found frozen solid that were the most interesting. After being frozen for more than 30,000 years, some of these holes still had seeds and dried grass that the rodents had carefully packed together before they died. These frozen pantries are like little time boxes of plant life from the Ice Age. They hold species that don't live in those areas anymore. By looking at the genes of these stored seeds, scientists have found extinct plant species that help them build very accurate models of ancient environments. One particularly exciting find came in 2024, when scientists discovered a frozen lemming nest containing mummified pups still curled together. Their fur was soft and fluffy, and their eyes were closed, as if sleeping. DNA sequencing of these pups revealed genetic markers linked to rapid reproduction, a trait that likely allowed lemmings to outlive many other Ice Age mammals. Their ability to breed quickly and recover from population crashes gave them a survival advantage when larger animals were disappearing. Frozen rodent remains have also provided insight into ancient diseases. Traces of parasites were found in some specimens, including preserved flea exoskeletons and nematode larvae, showing that even Ice Age rodents carried similar pests to modern ones. Studying these parasites helps scientists understand how diseases may have spread between species, including early humans who hunted or scavenged animals that fed on these rodents. The mysterious blue-tinted megafauna fat. In the study of Ice Age fossils, one of the weirdest and most interesting things found is fat. Not a huge skull, a furry body, or even blood. In particular, the blue-colored fat layers that can be found in frozen mammoths, steppe bison, and other large animals that have been taken from the tundra in Siberia. Scientists have been confused about this strange bluish color for decades. But a new study finally explains why these ancient animals had this strange fat and what it tells us about how they lived through one of the coldest times in Earth's history. The first reports of this phenomenon came from the excavation of a frozen steppe bison nicknamed Blue Babe in Alaska in the 1970s. The bison's muscles and fat had a distinct bluish tint, which gave it its famous nickname. At the time, Scientists assumed the color was simply caused by chemical reactions in the frozen soil. But as more frozen carcasses were recovered, mammoths, woolly rhinos, and even cave bears, all showing similar patches of blue-tinted fat, researchers began to suspect something more significant. In 2023, a team studying mammoth and bison tissue from Yakutia conducted a full biochemical analysis of this mysterious fat. They discovered that the color wasn't just a permafrost stain. Instead, it was caused by a combination of iron-rich blood residues and the high concentration of omega-3 fatty acids in the animal's fat tissues. Over tens of thousands of years, iron from broken-down blood cells reacted with oxygen trapped in the fat layers, creating a bluish-gray pigment. This process is similar to how some deep-sea fish flesh turns bluish when exposed to oxygen, a clue that this fat was rich in blood vessels and metabolically active when the animals were alive. So why did these Ice Age animals evolve such specialized fat? The answer lies in their survival strategy. Unlike regular white fat, which acts as passive energy storage, the blue-tinged fat was actually a form of brown adipose tissue, also known as brown fat. Brown fat is metabolically active and generates heat by burning stored energy, a process called non-shivering thermogenesis. Modern newborn mammals, including human babies, still have brown fat to keep warm, but in Ice Age megafauna, this adaptation was taken to the extreme. Mammoths, for instance, had thick layers of this heat-generating fat under their skin, especially around their necks, shoulders, and along their spines. A 2024 CT scan of a well-preserved mammoth calf named Coco showed dense networks of blood vessels running through these fat layers, proving that they acted like natural radiators, keeping body temperatures stable even during severe Arctic winters. The placement of the blue fat also provided new clues about how these animals regulated their body temperature. Steppe bison carcasses showed thicker layers of this specialized fat in the chest and neck regions, areas crucial for protecting vital organs and brain circulation. Mammoth calves, on the other hand, had proportionally more brown fat than adults, just like modern mammal babies, indicating they were especially vulnerable to cold and depended heavily on this internal heat source. Another surprising discovery came from woolly rhino carcasses found in 2022. Analysis of their blue fat layers revealed seasonal chemical changes. During summer months, their fat had higher levels of stored polyunsaturated fatty acids, which provided slow-burning energy for the lean winter months. By the end of winter, these fat layers would be almost depleted, leaving the animals vulnerable to starvation. One reason why sudden climate shifts could have devastated their populations. The presence of blue fat is also giving scientists new insights into Ice Age migration patterns. Chemical isotope studies of this fat can reveal what plants these animals ate before dying, because fatty acids store chemical signatures of diet. For example, mammoths with fat rich in certain omega-3 signatures likely grazed in tundra regions with sedge-dominated vegetation, while bison with different fat compositions may have roamed slightly warmer, grassier areas. This kind of analysis is helping reconstruct ancient grazing routes and seasonal migrations with surprising accuracy. It's also not clear if the blue fat had any effect on the relationship between predators and prey. Some experts think that this fat might have changed how predators hunted. For example, Blue Babe's body showed signs of having been scavenged by cave lions or short-faced bears. These animals may have been looking for food in late winter, when animals were weaker and their fat stores were low. It's possible that healthy people with thick active brown fat layers were harder for predators to catch, which helped them stay alive. Birds that never flew again. Frozen megafauna. Avifauna. We don't usually think of birds when we think of Ice Age megafauna, but giant birds used to live in the frozen tundra with mammoths and bison. Now, some of their bones, which have been amazingly well kept in Siberian permafrost, are revealing secrets about a world of birds that we thought was long gone. These are the Pleistocene megafauna birds, species that couldn't fly or were very heavy. They went extinct as quickly as mammoths, leaving behind only frozen feathers, preserved skin, and weak traces of their lives. One of the most remarkable discoveries came in 2021, when hunters in Yakutia unearthed a nearly intact carcass of a giant Ice Age goose. Estimated to have lived around 44,000 years ago, this bird was larger than any modern goose, standing almost 1.2 meters tall with a wingspan of over 2 meters. Its body was so well preserved that even the feathers were intact, their delicate barbs still interlocking as they would have been in life. The feathers' patterns, alternating brown and cream stripes, suggested seasonal molting, possibly shifting to whiter plumage in winter for camouflage against snow, much like modern ptarmigans. But the most famous avian Ice Age mummy so far is a species closely related to the now extinct great auk. In 2020, researchers discovered a frozen auk carcass in Permafrost near the Kolyma River. Unlike the famous great auks of the Atlantic, which went extinct in the 19th century, this Ice Age auk belonged to a distinct Arctic-adapted lineage. Its preserved webbed feet, thick waterproof feathers, and short stubby wings confirmed it was a strong swimmer, likely diving for fish in cold meltwater lakes. Chemical analysis of its feather oils showed unusually high levels of fat, suggesting it had a thick layer of insulating down beneath its outer feathers, a key adaptation for diving in icy waters. The mummified remains of the giant Ice Age owl, which were found in 2022 inside a collapsed permafrost burrow, may be the most interesting bird find so far. The owl's wings were about 1.5 meters long, and its claws were so big and sharp that they could cut through thick rodent burrows or even small hairs. Scientists can see exactly what it ate because the vole bones that were kept in its stomach as dried pellets. It hunted at night, like modern snowy owls, because its feathers were dark with light spots on them. Feather preservation in these frozen birds has provided new insights into Ice Age climates. Feathers act like natural climate recorders because isotopic ratios in their keratin change depending on the bird's diet and the temperature of its habitat. A 2024 isotopic study of the giant goose's feathers revealed seasonal shifts in diet, confirming long migrations across different ecosystems. This migratory behavior may have been crucial for survival, allowing these birds to exploit multiple food sources as Ice Age seasons shifted dramatically. In 2023, a beautiful frozen tundra swan was found. Its neck was gracefully curled, as if it had just fallen asleep in the snow. It looked like the swan died in early spring because its down feathers were still on its body. Scientists think that this frozen swan might help them figure out old migration routes. This is because the pollen in its feathers came from plants that aren't native to Siberia, which suggests that it flew in from further south before it died. Why did these birds disappear when many smaller bird species survived? The answer may lie in their size and migration habits. Many of these Ice Age birds were large, requiring vast wetland or tundra habitats that shrank as forests expanded after the last glacial maximum. Their long migratory routes were disrupted by changing climates, and many could not adapt quickly enough. The great auk lineage, for example, appears to have been heavily dependent on cold water fish populations that collapsed during warming periods. Some frozen bird carcasses are helping scientists understand Ice Age predator-prey interactions. Several preserved bird remains have puncture marks from fox or mustelid teeth, suggesting that Arctic foxes, weasels, and even wolves regularly scavenged or hunted these birds, especially during harsh winters when rodents were scarce. The feathers themselves are providing clues beyond simple appearance. Microscopic analysis of the great auk's down showed specialized hollow structures, much like those of penguins, which trapped air for insulation. This suggests that some of these Ice Age birds were far better adapted to extreme cold than their modern relatives. The preserved feather oils also contained unique fatty acids, which may have acted as waterproofing agents, keeping their plumage dry in sub-zero temperatures. The permafrost hyenas, predators locked in ice. When we think of hyenas, we don't picture frozen tundras, but rather African savannas. But during the Ice Age, the cave hyena, Crocuta crocuta spelaea, a strong species of hyena, lived on the frozen fields of Europe and northern Asia. It ate everything from bison to young mammoths. The jaws of these hyenas were so big they could break bones. They were bigger and stronger than current spotted hyenas. Scientists used to only be able to study fossils and gnawed bones, but new discoveries in Siberia's permafrost have given them something amazing: frozen hyena bodies with fur, teeth, and even crime scene evidence from predators. The most significant find was made in 2022 in Yakutia, near the Indigirka River, when reindeer herders stumbled upon a nearly intact cave hyena carcass. Radiocarbon dating placed it at around 39,000 years old. Its body, curled as if resting, still had patches of short, tawny brown fur with faint dark spots, confirming what many suspected from cave art, that these hyenas were patterned much like their modern African relatives. Its claws, still sharp, were curved in a way that suggested it was built for digging through snow or burrowing into frozen carcasses. What shocked scientists even more were the tooth marks on nearby frozen bones found at the same site. A half-buried steppe bison skeleton showed deep punctures and crushed bone fragments, clear evidence of hyena feeding. The spacing of the bite marks matched perfectly with the frozen hyena's dentition, making this the first direct predator-prey crime scene preserved in permafrost. Microscopic analysis of these bite marks revealed that the hyena had chewed through dense bison bones, extracting marrow, a behavior identical to modern hyenas, which are renowned for their bone-crushing jaws. This frozen hyena also provided the first soft tissue evidence of cold adaptation in the species. Its fur was denser than modern spotted hyenas, with a woolly undercoat beneath the coarse guard hairs, similar to Ice Age wolves. Analysis of its paw pads showed thickened skin and fur tufts between the toes, which likely acted as natural snowshoes, allowing the hyena to move across frozen tundra with ease. In 2023, another hyena discovery shocked researchers even more: a partially frozen den site uncovered in permafrost along the Kolyma River. The den contained fragmented bones of multiple animals, mostly reindeer and small rodents, with clear hyena tooth scoring. Even more astonishing, 2 juvenile hyenas were found partially mummified inside the den. Their bodies, about 3 months old, still had soft fur, tiny milk teeth, and curled tails. Their stomachs contained partially digested reindeer meat, proving they were being fed on freshly hunted kills rather than scavenged carcasses, suggesting these predators were active hunters, not mere opportunistic scavengers. The juvenile's fur also provided critical insights into Ice Age hyena behavior. They had thicker undercoats than adults, indicating that pups were born during colder months and required extra insulation. This supports the theory that cave hyenas timed their breeding season to coincide with late winter or early spring, ensuring that by summer their cubs were strong enough to follow migrating herds. DNA sequencing projects in 2024 made use of the exceptionally preserved muscle and bone marrow from these frozen hyenas. The genetic analysis confirmed that cave hyenas were a subspecies of the modern spotted hyena but diverged roughly 500,000 years ago, evolving larger skulls, thicker coats, and stronger jaw muscles to survive in colder climates. Their genes also showed increased fat storage and possibly a slower metabolism during winter, adaptations similar to other Ice Age predators like wolves and cave lions. Isotope analysis of the hyena bones revealed a surprisingly varied diet. While they primarily hunted reindeer, bison, and muskox, they occasionally fed on rodents, hares, and even fish, as indicated by nitrogen signatures. This dietary flexibility may have allowed them to thrive longer than some specialized Ice Age predators, although they eventually disappeared around the same time as their prey populations collapsed. Scientists have also learned new things from the preserved hyena teeth. Microscopic wear patterns showed that cave hyenas chewed bones even harder than modern hyenas do. This was probably because bone marrow was a key food source in the winter when soft tissue was scarce. Broken mammoth limb pieces found near the 2022 bodies show that their jaws were so strong that they could break mammoth calf bones. The discovery of these frozen hyenas has also brought up old arguments about how they associate with people. European cave paintings from a long time ago show hyenas hiding near human camps. The frozen remains support this idea. Some bones found near the 2023 den had bite marks from hyenas and cuts from stone tools. This suggests that people and hyenas were directly competing for dead animals. Hyenas were likely seen as both a threat and a competitor by early humans, who drove them out of good hunting grounds. Frozen fish from ancient lakes. No one thinks of fish when they think of Ice Age animals frozen in permafrost. Instead, they think of mammoths, rhinoceroses, or giant elk. But in the past few years, experts have found perfectly preserved Ice Age fish in ancient meltwater lakes. The fish had been frozen in silt for tens of thousands of years. These new findings are changing how we think about freshwater ecosystems during the Ice Age. They show that lakes and rivers were full of life that supported both large animals and early people. In 2021, when researchers exploring a collapsed permafrost bank near the Kolyma River uncovered several sturgeon preserved in near pristine condition. These fish, some over 1.5 meters long, were so well preserved that their scales glistened as they thawed, and their cartilage fins retained their original shape. One specimen even had eggs preserved in its body cavity, giving scientists rare evidence of Ice Age spawning cycles. In 2023, another big find was made in Yakutia, when a frozen layer of Arctic char was found in what used to be a Pleistocene meltwater lake. These char, which are linked to salmon today, were amazingly well preserved. Their skin patterns were still there, and their muscle tissue had a clear pinkish color. Since some were found in groups, it's likely that they died quickly and were caught during a rapid freeze that covered the whole shoal in ice very quickly. Aside from how well they've been preserved, what these finds tell us about Ice Age weather is the most interesting thing about them. Like tree rings, fish scales grow in yearly layers. Looking at these frozen specimens under a microscope showed bands of fast and slow growth that went back and forth. Interestingly, these trends show that some Ice Age lakes had a lot of algae and insects in the summer, even though the winters were harsh and devoid of nutrients. Chemical isotopes from the sturgeon bones revealed that some of these fish migrated between rivers and larger glacial lakes, proving that ancient waterways formed interconnected ecosystems similar to modern salmon runs. This migration would have made fish a vital seasonal food source for predators, and possibly humans. In fact, microscopic cut marks found on a few fish bones from other Ice Age sites suggest that early humans were fishing or scavenging these species long before agriculture began. The diet of these fish has also been reconstructed using stomach contents. Some of the sturgeon still had preserved insect larvae, small crustaceans, and even tiny plant fragments in their digestive tracts, indicating rich, diverse freshwater environments. The Arctic char specimens, on the other hand, contained mostly insect larvae and smaller fish, proving that even in cold Ice Age lakes, complex predator-prey relationships existed under the ice. Scientists found a group of freeze-dried minnows in the bed of a dried-up Pleistocene pond in 2024. This was a very interesting find. It looks like these tiny fish got stuck when the pond quickly froze because they were found squished together in layers of mud. Some of the minnows were so well kept that the structures of their eyes and gill filaments were still there. These small fish were found in the same layers of permafrost as mammoth and bison bones. This suggests they were an important part of the food chain, as they were prey for bigger fish and aquatic birds. Because these fish have been preserved, old DNA has also been able to be sequenced. By looking at the 2023 Arctic char specimens, scientists were able to map almost the entire genome of an Ice Age char. This showed that these fish were genetically different from modern char species. They were able to live in very low oxygen water below thick ice because they had special genes that made their mucous membranes bigger and their metabolic rates slower. From a broader ecological perspective, These fish are helping scientists understand how Ice Age lakes supported large mammals. Many megafauna, such as mammoths and steppe bison, likely visited these lakes for water and may have eaten aquatic plants, indirectly benefiting from the nutrient-rich ecosystems maintained by fish. Additionally, predators such as cave lions, hyenas, and Arctic foxes probably scavenged fish trapped in drying ponds during seasonal thaws. There is even proof that people used these fish supplies for their own gain. In 2023, researchers working near a permafrost-preserved char deposit discovered stone tools with tiny fish-scale impressions on them. This suggests that people in the Ice Age caught and processed fish as well as big game. This goes against the long-held belief that people in the Ice Age mostly hunted big game. Instead, they probably ate a variety of foods, including freshwater fish, which were easy to find during hard winters. Parasites that were kept in these fish gave scientists one of the most surprising findings. Several of the sturgeon bodies had frozen tapeworm cysts in their muscles, which is clear proof that parasites were spread in waterways during the Ice Age. Scientists are learning more about how these parasites may have spread diseases in the past, and how they may have affected animals and people who ate sick fish. The tiny survivors, ancient worms and tardigrades. There have been many amazing frozen Ice Age finds like mammoths and cave lions, but nothing is as amazing as the little organisms that not only stayed frozen, but also came back to life. Unfortunately, mammoths are still only found in fossil form. However, some very small animals like ancient worms, nematodes and tardigrades have been trapped in permafrost for tens of thousands of years and have only come to life when experts thaw the ice. What we think we know about life, stasis, and the limits of biology is being changed by these tiny survivors. The most famous case came in 2018, when Russian scientists successfully revived 2 species of nematodes, microscopic worms, from permafrost samples collected in Yakutia. One specimen, identified as Panagrolimus colimensis, was revived from frozen soil estimated to be 46,000 years old. After being thawed in a laboratory dish, the worms slowly wriggled to life, stretching, moving, and even feeding as if no time had passed. Even more astonishing, they later laid eggs, producing offspring after tens of millennia of complete dormancy. In 2023, the same research team made another shocking discovery. The revived nematodes weren't just surviving by chance. They carried unique genetic adaptations for long-term dormancy. Their DNA revealed a set of genes linked to cryptobiosis, a state where metabolism stops almost entirely, allowing organisms to survive extreme freezing, radiation, and even vacuum conditions. The nematode's cells had produced specialized sugars, particularly trehalose, which acted like antifreeze, protecting their internal structures from ice crystal damage during their long sleep. But nematodes aren't the only tiny survivors. Tardigrades, famously nicknamed water bears, have also been found frozen in Ice Age sediments, reviving after thousands of years. Tardigrades are microscopic, 8-legged creatures known for their incredible toughness. In 2021, researchers successfully revived a tardigrade from Siberian permafrost estimated to be at least 24,000 years old. Once thawed, the tardigrade slowly rehydrated and began crawling around under a microscope, behaving like a creature that had simply taken a long nap rather than enduring an epoch of ice. Their ability to go into a state called tun formation, basically curling into a dry, ball-like shape that stops almost all cellular activity, is what lets them stay alive. In this state, tardigrades replace a lot of their body water with proteins that protect their cells by creating a shell that looks like glass. This keeps molecules from getting damaged. It's amazing that their DNA didn't break down much after tens of thousands of years. This makes them great models for studying how to keep living things alive for a long time. These revived microanimals aren't just biological curiosities, they are rewriting how we understand life's resilience. Some scientists now believe that similar cryptobiotic mechanisms could exist in other permafrost-trapped organisms, even in microscopic eggs of insects or rotifers. In fact, In 2021, researchers successfully revived bdelloid tiny aquatic animals, from 24,000-year-old permafrost samples. Like tardigrades, these rotifers resumed feeding and reproducing after being thawed. The results of this study have huge implications. If worms and tardigrades can live through tens of thousands of years of being frozen solid, then maybe life could live through harsh conditions on other worlds or moons. Cryptobiotic creatures like these might be hiding under the frozen surfaces of Jupiter and Saturn's moons Europa and Enceladus, waiting for the right conditions to wake up. There's also a medical angle. Scientists are now studying the genes of these ancient worms and tardigrades to understand how they prevent cell damage during freezing. If humans could mimic these adaptations, it could revolutionize cryopreservation, allowing for safer organ storage or even long-term space travel. The nematode's use of trehalose and other protective proteins, for example, might inspire new cryoprotectants for human tissues. These tiny creatures also provide a glimpse into Ice Age ecosystems. Ancient nematodes carry gut microbes preserved from their original environment, allowing scientists to study ancient soil bacteria and reconstruct what microbial life looked like tens of thousands of years ago. Some of these microbes are now being revived alongside the worms, giving us an unprecedented look at ancient microbiomes. But the return of extinct species is also controversial and dangerous. Even though nematodes and tardigrades are not harmful, some scientists are worried that melting permafrost could bring out dangerous pathogens that have been dormant for thousands of years. Bacteria and viruses from the past are already being found in melting ice. Most of them probably won't infect living things today, but we can't rule out the chance. The mystery of the buried megasloth. Sloths are usually thought of as slow-moving animals that hang out in warm trees. But during the Ice Age, sloths were huge, ground-dwelling animals called megasloths. Most species, like the South American Megatherium, did best in warm places with lots of trees. So when scientists found the frozen body of a huge sloth in the permafrost of the Andes, it brought up one of the strangest questions of the Ice Age. Why would a tropical animal live in such a cold, high-altitude place? The first major discovery was made in 2020 in the Peruvian Andes, at an altitude of over 13,000 feet. Climbers spotted what looked like a collapsed rock slide with unusual bones poking through the frozen soil. Excavation revealed the partial carcass of a giant ground sloth, preserved in ice with tufts of reddish-brown fur still clinging to its skin. Radiocarbon dating placed the sloth at 28,000 years old, well within the peak of the last ice age. This find shocked paleontologists because megasloths were thought to have been strictly adapted to warmer forested regions. Yet this sloth had several clear cold weather adaptations. Its fur was thicker than any other known megasloth species, with a dense undercoat similar to Ice Age bison. Its claws, though still massive, were slightly shorter and more curved, likely helping it dig through snow or frozen soil in search of roots and shrubs. In 2022, a second discovery added more evidence that some sloths ventured into cold environments. This time, a partial juvenile sloth was uncovered in the Bolivian Andes, trapped in a frozen scree slope. Its stomach contents, astonishingly well preserved, contained dried grass, mountain sedges, and even mosses, plants typical of high-altitude tundra, not tropical forests. This suggested that at least some megasloths were seasonal migrants, possibly moving between lowland forests and highland grasslands, depending on food availability. The fat layer on the 2020 Andean sloth was the most noteworthy aspect about it. Tropical sloths don't have much body fat, but this sloth did, like Ice Age mammoths and rhinos, have a thick layer of fat under its skin that keeps it warm. Chemical isotope analysis showed that the diet was adapted to plants that grow in cold climates because it had high amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. Some experts think that this means that a subspecies of megasloth that can survive in cold places evolved in the Andes during the late Pleistocene, living in the mountain tundra long after other populations had moved to warmer places. The preserved bones of these frozen sloths have also revealed new insights into their mobility. Their limb proportions were slightly different from typical ground sloths. Their legs were shorter and more muscular, better suited for climbing rocky slopes rather than just lumbering across flat plains. Wear patterns on the claws suggest they frequently dug through snow or loose soil to reach underground roots, a behavior never before documented in sloths. But how did they end up buried in ice? Evidence from soil layers around the Andean carcass suggests a sudden mud and ice slide may have trapped it. Pollen samples from the surrounding frozen soil show a mix of cold-tolerant tundra plants and sudden influxes of dust, indicating a period of rapid climate fluctuation. The sloth may have been foraging on a high slope when unstable ground, softened by thawing permafrost, collapsed and entombed it in ice almost instantly. These discoveries have effects on more than just sloths. If giant sloths were able to adapt to living in cold mountainous places, it means that ecosystems during the Ice Age were much more flexible and linked than was thought before. It's possible that large herbivores moved annually between tropical and tundra habitats, following food sources over long distances. This ability to move around might explain why some species of megafauna lived longer in South America than in the north. Just as important is the genetic proof. In 2024, experts took parts of DNA sequences from the preserved bone marrow of an Andean megasloth. The data showed genetic differences from species that live in lowlands, which supports the idea that there is a separate population at high elevations. Some genes related to hair growth and fat metabolism were the same in humans and woolly mammals. This is a clear example of convergent evolution, which means that two different species evolved similar traits to live in cold places. Frozen humans, the oldest mummies beneath ice. Mammoths and cave lions are the first things that come to mind when we think of frozen Ice Age finds. But the frozen body parts that were found in Siberian permafrost may be the most interesting and scary. Some of these Ice Age human mummies are over 30,000 years old, making them some of the oldest ever found frozen. They are not as well preserved as the famous Otzi, the Iceman from the Alps. Skin, hair, and even pieces of clothing that have been preserved are changing the way we think about how past people lived in some of the harshest places on Earth. The most famous of these finds came in 2019, when construction workers in Yakutia uncovered partial human remains while clearing a thawing permafrost layer. What they found shocked researchers. A young woman's mummified head and upper torso, still covered in leathery skin and strands of dark braided hair. Radiocarbon dating placed her at roughly 28,000 years old, making her one of the oldest preserved humans ever found in the Arctic. Her skin, though shrunken, still showed tattoo-like pigment traces on her forearm, possibly early symbolic markings or tribal identifiers. In 2021, another discovery near the Indigirka River revealed a male mummy, estimated to be about 25 years old, buried with primitive stone tools and animal hide clothing fragments. His preserved skin, still clinging to parts of his arms and chest, showed faint scar lines, suggesting he may have been a hunter who sustained injuries in life. Most remarkable was the preservation of his hair, which retained its natural reddish-brown color, giving scientists clues about genetic diversity among Ice Age humans in Siberia. What makes these mummies particularly valuable is the preservation of soft tissue, which is rare for humans of this age. CT scans of the 2019 female mummy revealed muscle structure still intact around her shoulders and arms, allowing researchers to study physical build and body composition. Isotope analysis of her hair and preserved fingernails showed a diet rich in fish and reindeer meat, proving that Ice Age humans in this region relied heavily on river and tundra resources, rather than just big game hunting. The remains also shed light on early Arctic clothing technology. Fragments of animal fur found near the male mummy were identified as wolverine and reindeer hides, stitched together with sinew. Microscopic wear patterns on these hides suggested they were shaped into layered garments, much like modern Inuit parkas, providing insulation against extreme cold. This challenges earlier assumptions that Ice Age humans in Siberia had only rudimentary clothing. Instead, they were sophisticated tailors, adapting to freezing climates with remarkable ingenuity. What was in the guts of the 2021 male mummy was one of the most surprising things that was found. Scientists found pieces of charred fish skin and cooked root vegetables in the remains of a body that was partly decomposed. This shows that people in Siberia during the Ice Age did more than just hunt for food. They also cooked and processed it. Pieces of burned wood found near the grave showed that people in this area knew how to use controlled fire at least 25,000 years ago. The cause of death for these individuals remains uncertain, but some evidence suggests sudden environmental events. The female mummy's body showed no major trauma, but sediment analysis from her burial site revealed she may have been buried in a sudden landslide caused by thawing permafrost, which froze again shortly after, sealing her in ice. The male mummy, on the other hand, had fractured ribs and a cracked skull, suggesting either a hunting accident, a fall, or even conflict with other humans or predators. In 2024, DNA sequencing of both mummies revealed that these humans belonged to a population closely related to early East Asian groups, with some genetic markers later found in Native American populations. This supports the theory that Siberia was a critical migration route during the Ice Age, with some of these early peoples eventually crossing into the Americas via the Bering Land Bridge. The finding of these frozen people also changes how we think about how people were buried during the Ice Age. The female was found lying on her side with her arms raised, and the male was found on his back with tools next to him. These poses suggest that they were buried on purpose. This means that even these early Arctic people buried their dead in traditional or symbolic ways, which shows how complex their society and culture were. The Pleistocene predator trap under ice caves. A natural predator trap found under an old ice cave is one of the scariest things found from the Ice Age. It shows many animals frozen together in death, both hunters and prey. This frozen mass of tangled skeletons and partly preserved carcasses was found in Siberia's thawing permafrost. It gives scientists a unique, almost forensic look at how predators and prey interacted and sometimes died in desperate battles for survival during the Pleistocene. The first major find came in 2022, when a collapsed section of permafrost near the Lenskaya Grotto cave system revealed a cluster of bones protruding from the ice. As excavation continued, researchers realized they weren't just looking at random animal remains. They had uncovered a frozen death trap. Inside, they found cave hyenas, Arctic wolves, and even a young cave lion, all clustered in one chamber alongside the bones of reindeer and steppe bison. The remains suggested a violent and sudden death for all trapped inside. What made this discovery extraordinary was the state of preservation. Several of the animals still had fur and skin clinging to their bones, and some predator jaws were found locked around prey carcasses, as if frozen mid-bite. One Arctic wolf, for example, was found with its teeth buried in a bison calf's shoulder blade, while a hyena skeleton lay nearby with a shattered leg, suggesting it may have been injured during the struggle. So what caused this mass death? Soil and ice analysis revealed that the cave once had a natural ice floor that periodically collapsed due to seasonal melting. Scientists believe a herd of reindeer or bison may have sought shelter inside the cave during a sudden storm, only to fall through thin ice into a deeper chamber. Predators, following the scent of trapped prey, likely entered after them, and suffered the same fate when the ice beneath them gave way. The animals were then sealed by refreezing permafrost, locking this prehistoric crime scene for over 30,000 years. The bone analysis supports this dramatic scenario. Several prey skeletons had bite marks from multiple predators, while predator bones showed evidence of cannibalistic scavenging, hyena bones with tooth marks from other hyenas, suggesting the trapped animals turned on each other in desperation before succumbing to starvation or cold. The frozen remains also show us something new about the order of predators during the Ice Age. Larger predators like cave hyenas and wolves were found closer to the entrance. They may have died first after slipping into the room. Smaller scavengers, like Arctic foxes, were trapped later, probably drawn in by the smell of the dead animals. Some people even found the skeleton of a fox curled up inside the ribcage of a frozen bison. This suggests that the animal tried to eat the bones before getting stuck. Fur and tissue preservation on some of the carcasses gave further insight into the harsh conditions inside the cave. Microscopic frost patterns on the animal's fur suggested they froze quickly after death, likely due to a sudden temperature drop once the cave collapsed and sealed off airflow. This rapid freezing is what kept their bodies intact for tens of thousands of years. What we think we know about Ice Age ecology is being changed by the predator-prey relationships caught in this ice trap. Isotopic study of the predator's bones and toothwear showed that these animals were opportunistic feeders who often ate each other instead of strictly hunting. The hyena's jaws were very worn down, which shows that they ate a lot of bone marrow. They probably fought over it inside the cave during their last days. The microbiology of the spot has also shown some very interesting things. Ancient bacteria and parasites, like nematode eggs and hyena intestine worms, were found in samples of frozen soil. This gives us information about the health and disease ecology of these Ice Age animals. Some of the first places where bones and fur of animals that were eaten by other animals have been preserved. These sites also show the tiny life that lived in and around the animals. De-extinction dreams, what frozen DNA can really do. Scientists successfully sequenced most of the woolly mammoth genome from frozen bone marrow in 2013. This was the first time the thought of bringing extinct species back to life got a lot of attention. But it wasn't until the baby mammoth lyuba, the leaner horsefoals, and the giant cave bears' bodies were found that the quality of ancient DNA got good enough to make cloning seem like more than just science fiction. Unlike dry fossils, frozen tissues keep DNA fragments and sometimes even whole cell nuclei. This makes them perfect for genetic engineering. In 2024, researchers achieved a milestone by sequencing over 90% of the mammoth genome with high accuracy using DNA extracted from lyuba's preserved bone marrow and yucca's tail hairs. This allowed geneticists to identify the exact genes responsible for cold adaptations, such as thick fur growth, fat storage, and oxygen efficiency in freezing temperatures. Some of these genes have already been successfully inserted into Asian elephant cell cultures, proving that mammoth traits can be expressed in living cells. The same year, a South Korean research team announced they had cultured viable mammoth skin cells from preserved tissues, sparking excitement about the possibility of creating a mammoth embryo through somatic cell nuclear transfer, SCNT, the same cloning technique used for Dolly the sheep. While no embryo has been implanted yet, the technical groundwork is being laid for what may become the first true de-extinction attempt within the next decade. But mammoths aren't the only candidates. The leaner horse foals, preserved with liquid blood still in their veins, have provided DNA so complete that scientists have already reconstructed nearly the entire Equus linensis genome. This opens the possibility of cloning them using Przewalski's horses as surrogate mothers. Because leaner horses are genetically close to modern wild horses, their revival may be far easier than recreating mammoths. The giant cave bears are another promising candidate. The 2020 discovery of a fully preserved adult with intact muscle tissue and bone marrow gave researchers exceptionally high-quality DNA. In 2023, scientists compared its genome to modern brown bears and found they shared over 90% genetic similarity, meaning theoretically modified brown bears could be engineered to express cave bear traits. Even woolly rhinos have entered the conversation. Keratin, extracted from preserved horns and bone marrow from frozen carcasses, has provided substantial DNA sequences, with researchers now assembling a full genome map. Because their closest living relatives, the Sumatran rhinos, are endangered, some conservationists believe reviving cold-adapted rhinos could help reintroduce grazing species into areas like Siberia to restore lost steppe ecosystems. De-extinction isn't just about pasting DNA, though. Even when they are almost whole, ancient genes are often broken up and damaged. Scientists have to fill in the gaps with DNA from live relatives, which means they have to make hybrids instead of exact copies of extinct animals. For example, a mammoth that comes back to life would probably be a cross between a mammoth and an elephant. It would have enough mammoth traits to live in cold places, but it would not be genetically identical to a real mammoth. Another challenge is epigenetics, the switches that turn genes on or off. Frozen DNA doesn't preserve these regulatory patterns, meaning a cloned mammoth or cave bear might not develop exactly like its ancient counterpart. Without the right gut bacteria, diet, or environmental cues, a de-extinct mammoth calf might grow differently or struggle to adapt to cold, even if its genes are accurate. Despite these hurdles, some scientists argue that we don't need to create perfect copies to achieve meaningful ecological restoration. Projects like Pleistocene Park in Siberia already use hardy modern animals such as bison and horses to mimic Ice Age ecosystems. Adding mammoth-like hybrids or cold-adapted horses could help restore grasslands, slow permafrost melting, and stabilize the Arctic carbon cycle, turning de-extinction into a tool for climate change mitigation rather than just scientific curiosity. The technology itself is advancing faster than public debate. In 2024, a US biotech company working with ancient DNA announced the creation of a living cell line that expressed mammoth-specific hemoglobin, capable of carrying oxygen more efficiently in cold environments. If progress continues at this pace, the first hybrid mammoth embryo could exist by the end of the 2020s. What about little animals? Nematodes and tardigrades that were brought back to life in Chapter 14 have already shown that some living things don't even need to be cloned. They can just wake up after tens of thousands of years. In fact, scientists are studying these tiny survivors to learn how to keep cells stable while they are frozen. This could one day make it easier to clone bigger mammals. Every frozen body that is taken out of the ice, from baby mammoths with perfect eyelashes to hyenas stuck in the middle of a bite, is a story that needs to be told. Scientists are seriously thinking about bringing some of these giants back to life, which means these discoveries are changing more than just the past. They're also changing what we know about life, survival, and even the future. To see more of these amazing trips through time, click the like button. Tell us which frozen animal amazed you the most, and join for more in-depth looks into the secrets the Ice Age is still hiding.